talking about, look, that they're American guys, but they're talking about promoting the interests of Saudi Arabia or the interests of some other country, right? And there's a line that they can't cross, right? And sometimes they push right up to the edge. And that line is when they start talking about providing you resources, like giving you money to help them promote those things. It's like, okay, see that line? You done crossed it. So you got to be real careful, because a lot of times the way they operate is they want to pull you into their circle. Then once you're in, you've accepted of money or some gifts, then it's in your interest to protect them from getting caught, because by extension you get caught. So it's like, what's the old thing from the Trojan War? Beware of Greeks carrying gifts. Right? Gotta watch when people start offering things. It's like, okay, what do you want for this? There's always something they want. So we're going to talk a little bit about. I wanted to talk about the cyber landscape as it relates to the interaction between countries. So before some of you all came, we talked a little bit about how crazy things are going to get in the next 2 months. Because everybody's going to want a piece of trying to influence our election. One way or just to cause chaos. So there was an article I read yesterday that was looking at the difference between the Russian influencing campaign, the Iranian influencing campaign, and the Chinese campaign. So the Iranians influencing campaign, remember the Donald Trump's campaign said, the Iranians are spying on us, they're trying to get us, and the Justice Department said, yeah, we know. We've been monitoring it. Yeah. And they're very much angry at Trump for killing the nuclear agreement and all the sanctions. So they're going after him. The Russians are very much pro Donald Trump, right?
Of course.
China is very much wanting to sow discord. China just wants chaos in the United States. They want the two, so they're kind of backing both sides, hoping to push both sides more into. So all three countries, even though they're allies in the world, there's a big four alliance, I call it North Korea, Russia, China, and Iran. North Korea basically is still in the stealing money mode. Not so much getting into the election, but they're trying to do banking apps and steal Bitcoin wallets. They're so poor that they're laser focused on stealing money. That's what we get the election. We're going to steal from whomever wins. It doesn't matter, right? It's North Korea and that. So, with respect to the big four, the interesting thing is they haven't coordinated their policies. Now, we know that Russia and China have shared hacking tools for something. Not always, because a few years ago, there was a big conflict. I wouldn't go so far as conflict. There was a big controversy because Russia caught China hacking into its defense industries and stealing terabytes of information from the Russian defense industry. And Russia's like, I thought we were like, come on. China said, it's a little hacking between friends, right? So, and Russia really didn't do anything. Part of it is because Russia needs China more than China needs Russia. It's not a good relationship. So we want to look at these things, and I wanted to kind of go down different countries. So
I also think that it's because they have the same kind of enemy too.
Well,
so they want to stick together. Yeah. I don't know.
Who's the enemy? Right.
America.
I know.
So this way.
Nobody likes this.
I think that regardless, sometime you're put in a corner that, hey, they're on my side. I want anybody, but don't want America. So
that's so funny.
It's all good, that's why.
Because I remember the day when we were like, everybody loved America. So in the in the 80s. I went to Pakistan, up to the northwest frontier where the Khyber Pass was, Gilgit and Swat and all that.
Mm-hmm.
I go in a village, all these mujahideen guys.
Mm-hmm.
Nowadays they would cut out my liver and I just, But when they found out I was an American, my money was no good. People were bringing out food, giving me tea. Everybody was trying to, wanting to take pictures of this before the selfie, right?
Mm-hmm.
Take pictures with me and their kids, inviting me into their tents. I mean, you were American, you were like a rock star anywhere you went. Nowadays, if you're American, you'd be kidnapped. They put you in an orange jumpsuit, right? They would like give you the money or off with the head kind of thing. It's just not the same as it was. It was kind of cool being an American now. Go anywhere, but times have changed. So, we're talking about the laws of war. Remember we talked up here about Joseph Vela, the right of war, Joseph Vela, the law of war. Remember, we're talking about a legal structure of what is or what constitutes war. War is an institution of human society. And I would submit I'm not an aberration. We think of it as an aberration because bad things happen and we don't like to. We really don't want to conceptualize that war is a normal state of human society. I'm putting that out there. You guys can disagree. Please disagree.
I disagree.
Okay,
Of course.
But I would say, and I've been working on this, I'll probably write it up. I would say that war is integral to human progress.
No.
Almost all of our technology, right? And we expand our technology. Right now, what's going on in Ukraine, I tell everybody, watch it real closely. You're watching Terminator evolve, right? We're watching warfare change completely from what it was 10 years ago. Yes, ma'am?
I'm gonna have to disagree with you, Eric,
Okay,
because
please do.
because
Throw it out
I
there.
mean, this is just ignorance, though.
What?
So I mean, it's cool to say that everyone's ignorant too, because they probably are. But war is just ignorance, because at the end of the war, you end up talking in just.
Yeah, but we got to call the herd.
But to say that everything is like war, I just.
No, I'm not saying everything's war. I'm saying war is an integral part of human society, especially in modern technological society. I'll go back even further. So I was watching this program about Neanderthals, and they dug up all these Neanderthals in a cave in Iraq.
Mm-hmm.
One of the biggest finds of Neanderthal, and almost all the skeletons had cut marks on them. And the heads had, like some spear through the head. The bodies the skeletons had lots of injuries. So these guys are like whacking at each other and bashing each other in the head. Not nice stuff, right? Broken bones and all that. So they said there was a lot of evidence of violence on these bodies, these skeletons. And the same thing is true of other ancient skeletons, whether it's Cro-Magnon man or Homo erectus. All these, when they find these skeletons, they dig them up. There's a disproportionately high number of them that have been, where they could tell from the skeletal remains there was violence. And violence was often the cause of death, right? So I would submit that tells me that war and violence is not an aberration. Human beings are disposed to violence. And this was hard for me. I mean, I've just come to this realization. I've always, through most of my life, conceptualized that no, violence is something that's not integral to human behavior. That it's conditioned by, say, economic factors, not enough food, being humiliated, something. I had to find some sort of psychological.
And I would agree with that,
right?
because hold on, if you were to get someone grew up in a box, didn't know anything, they wouldn't know what is war.
Right.
right? But you have barbarians that live with animals and they see animals fighting and killing, so they maybe rationalize from that, so they learn that. That's a learned nature.
Well, they also they had
So
to eat.
I would,
Survival.
yeah, so I would say that, yeah, it has to do with maybe some other things in there, Eric.
Well, so I was thinking about this, and so let's fast forward a few thousand years, and now we come up with rules and laws. You know, there's the just war theory within Catholic social, which that is too, but the just war theory. Right? Catholic Church says you should go around killing folks, but you have a right to self-defense. Right?
Mm-hmm.
As nation states, you should respect the borders of other countries. But if you get invaded, so for instance, under just war theory, the Ukrainians have a right to fight back. Because they weren't doing anything and Russia invaded. They're clearly, in that sense, it's very clear there's an aggressor, without question, and then there's a country that has the right of self-defense. Now, things get a little murky, you know, because Ukraine has invaded into Russia. So now in the Kursk region, Ukrainians have taken a bunch of land. So in that, now, Zelensky says we're still exercising self-defense because by taking this chunk of Russia, maybe we can trade it for some of our land. And basically, this gives it a bargaining chip. Putin says, I don't care. He can take. Putin's out to get all of Ukraine, and he will take. He doesn't care how many Russians he has to kill, how many Ukrainians have to kill. He doesn't care how many years it takes.
Yeah.
He's very clear on what he wants to achieve, and the only thing that can stop him are the Russian people. How much are the Russians going to put up with this? Because the United States isn't going to intervene.
Yeah, but
Western Europe isn't going to intervene.
but I think a lot of the Russians agree that Ukraine was a part of Russia and it should still stay too. So I think it would probably be maybe 50-50. So.
Yeah, there might be. I mean, that's part of the narrative. There's all these different narratives.
Yeah.
I know this is absurd, but I'm going to throw it out anyway, just for fun. So what if one day there's a new king in England that says, you know, that Revolutionary War was BS. And really, the United States belongs to the British. Right?
Yeah.
I
It's
mean,
true.
It used to be part of the United Kingdom, right?
Mm-hmm.
We want it back. What? And then all of a sudden these British warships come up to New York and they start.
They wouldn't make it halfway.
Right?
They wouldn't make it halfway across the
No, they wouldn't.
No.
No, they wouldn't make it halfway across. And I would, if they landed in New York, they would catch hell in the Bronx.
Right?
Right? That would be the end of the British Army. Yeah, you're going into the Bronx.
Good luck.
Queens, maybe. But have you been to the Bronx? No. So, but they can make the same claim. Well, it's part of the United States.
Yeah.
Or Mexico could invade Texas.
True. That's true.
And say, you know, this whole Guadalupe Hidalgo, the treaty,
over with.
we don't recognize that anymore. It was a bad deal. So we want Texas back.
Yeah.
Right?
It's true.
And you know, Mexico, what is it? About 100 million people in Mexico? If they really wanted it back, it would be a bad war. It would be really. So these jokers that talk about, well, we want Texas secession. You hear this? Texas secession?
No.
There's a whole group in Texas that, yeah, we ought to secede from the United States. And I love what I said, and how long do you think it will be before Mexico comes up here?
Right? And takes over.
Texas back?
Yep.
And they all come.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we forgot about that.
Yeah.
We
Think
forgot.
this through, right? Because everybody, if you go back far enough in history, everybody has a claim on everybody else's land. Right? Go back. There's not enough Native Americans to say, you all need to leave. Right? But they can make a case that we all need to go somewhere else. Right?
Yeah.
So, anyway, just go through quickly Here's some of the things in China. When is an act of war? So we want to ask, is cyber attacks an act of war? Keep that in your mind. So we've had the Chinese People's Liberation Army unit conducting cyber operations and exfiltrating data from dozens of Fortune 500 companies, obtaining confidential business information, planting malware on their systems. Is that an act of war? Espionage. Espionage is spying has always been recognized as something countries do, and it's like get over it, right? Office of Personnel Management, my favorite, because my stuff got hacked. The Chinese Advanced Persistent Threat Group linked to the People's Liberation Army obtained classified information on 21 million government employees, including myself. Right? Is that an act of war? Espionage.
Yeah.
American Superconductor, a wind energy company, was compromised by Chinese government-sponsored cyber operation. That was a big deal because the American company had entered into a joint venture with a Chinese company. Joint venture. They're going to make money together, right? The Chinese company says, okay, they made the big blades and all that. And the American company built the programmable logic control. They built the firmware to control the
windmills.
And they had a deal. Right? So as the Chinese company was expanding its worldwide operation, they were buying all these PLCs, programmable logic control, from the American company. American company, they're making so much money. They put on 3 shifts, they hire all these people. And then all of a sudden, the order stopped. Wait a minute. And so the US CEO, you get in touch with the Chinese, said, what happened? They said, well, we don't need your, we don't need your firmware anymore. We don't need those devices anymore. We're continuing to expand your business. I got a contract with you. Exclusive contract. So he had one of his engineers go up to one of these wind turbines, climbed all the way up there, it's hundreds of feet high.
Yeah.
Open it up, and he found a duplicate of their programmable logic controller, but was made in China. So what had happened is the Chinese had stolen the architecture for that device and were manufacturing it themselves.
Yeah.
So he filed a lawsuit in Chinese court. You know how long it took to adjudicate?
20 years?
About 10 years. And he got maybe a penny on the dollar for his damages. Right? 35 million. He claims he lost about $1 billion. Company went out of business. But they did, the FBI got involved. The FBI said, well, let's see, how do you think they got the architecture? How did they get the intellectual property? So they did an investigation. It led back to one of their engineers.
Of course. Always.
Who was an Austrian guy.
There we go.
He had helped them to design the PLC. And he sold the architecture to the Chinese, and then left the company. They tracked him down. And he was living in Vienna, and he had a Ferrari and a nice house. And they went to the Austrian government and said, we got the evidence. And the Austrian government, they tried him, gave him a year, and they had to get back in Ferrari.
Oh my God.
But so what happened was an insider job. So that's the kind of stuff they do. Then of course we go to Russia, and Russia, you know, they hacked into the DNC during the election, but they also hacked into the RNC. They hacked into both. They only released the information from the DNC. Why would you do that? Why would you only release one side?
For security purposes.
You're going to build more tension between the sides.
Yeah. And also,
Because if it's everyone's like, oh, we all got screwed.
Yeah.
so if you release one side, and it's embarrassing, but you keep the other side. You can hold that over the other people. If you don't do what we want, we'll release it.
Mhm.
Oh, that Putin is a sharp cook. I don't like him, but he's smart. And he's well trained. Remember what his job was? What was Putin's
It
job?
was a KGB spot.
He was KGB, and guess what his portfolio was? Guess what his training area was?
His training area.
Yeah, what did he do?
I know
What was
he's-
his job?
he's training.
Disinformation and propaganda.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
That's what he did. He wanted to be an assassin, but he didn't quite make it.
So he decided
So
to
they
go for
put him in
propaganda.
this other job. I guess he was too short to take seriously.
Probably so.
Come on.
Probably
You're gonna
so.
shoot me? Come here. Whoop. Get out of here.
Probably so.
Now he has people thrown out of windows, you know. So if you ever go to Russia, always stay on the ground floor. Just saying. Okay, so Russia did attack Estonia. Remember, you all read about that? So what happened is in Estonia, they have this big plaza in Tallinn, there's a capital city of Estonia. Estonia's got like 2.5 million people, right? They have a capital city, Tallinn, nice picturesque, real pretty. So there was this bronze statue of a Russian soldier. Because the Russians threw the Germans out in World War II. And then Estonia became an Estonian SSR, became a Soviet republic, right? So when the wall came down, the Estonians went independent. They said, great, Russia, go away. We're independent. Yeah. But the big statue was there. So about 2007, people in Estonia said, boy, this thing about statues, right? Do we really need this here? I mean, they didn't really quite liberate us. Molotov agreement, you know? So what happened is before Hitler invaded Poland, he sent his foreign minister, von Ribbentrop, to Russia and said, we're about ready to invade these guys, but we don't want you guys to get involved. And the Russians said, okay, sure, but what do we get out of it? You can take Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia and get a piece of Poland. Stalin said, fine. You can go with that. So then Germany invaded. But what Stalin didn't know that Hitler was going to like, guess what? We're invading you too. And so the Germans took Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia, right? And then when the Russians came back in, they took it back, made it part of the Soviet Union. The Estonians were like, this is a tough neighborhood. One minute the Germans are coming, next it's the Russians. We just want to be independent. So when the wall came down, the Estonians said, this is it. We finally get a chance to be independent. We got rid of both of those idiots, right? And we want to get rid of this statue. So they moved it from the central square in Tallinn to a Russian military cemetery. But there's Estonia's population about maybe a quarter of the people in Estonia are ethnically Russian, speak Russian, and they got all upset about it, and so they had riots. So the Estonian police put down the riots and tear gas out. Well, Putin decided he was going to support the Russian-speaking people, so he launched a major cyber attack against Estonia, and they didn't really have the defenses there. So they basically shut down the country. I mean, just about everything. Well, after it does so, Estonia, when this was happening, they said, excuse me, NATO, we're under attack.
Yeah.
NATO, hello NATO, we join. Aren't you supposed to do something about it? They're like, well, we're not sure what we can do because it's not like an attack we prepared for. I mean, if it's tanks coming across, okay, you know, we do that. But this is different. We didn't really know what it was. And we didn't know legally where to, you know, where do we stand on it? That's when they came up with this Tallinn manual. So they asked a bunch of scholars, legal scholars, hey, would you look at this and make a ruling on what this was? Right? So the legal scholars say, take international law and try to figure this out. What happened? So they set up also in Tallinn, Estonia. NATO decided, okay, we have to start preparing for this. So they set up what's called the NATO's Cooperative Cyber Defense Center of Excellence, right? So that was put in Holland. They got all these international experts, about 20 experts. And in 2013, the Holland manual was published by Cambridge University Press. I think it's in your document. I think I put a copy of it. But, so the focus of it was on, how do we deal with destructive cyber operations? Does this cross that line into warfare? Is this war? So they asked these legal scholars to look at it. There's a second version called Holland Manual 2.0 that was published in 2017. But so they said there's 10 different points that they look at. One, international law can be applied to cyberspace and use of cyberspace for attacks and defense. For sovereign nations, you can apply international law. The applicability of international law under the concepts of jus ad bellum, while valid, are limited due to the question of territoriality and attribution. So cyberspace has no real territory. And it's hard to say who actually attacked. Was it the state, or was it cyber criminal people, or was it a lone attacker? You'd have to have ironclad attribution. If a tank comes across the border, you kind of, yeah, there's a tank.
Yeah.
It's on Earth, okay, that's war, right? But a cyber attack? Who did it? It's hard to question. Countries have a legitimate rights to self-defense, but there's the question of proportionality to the response. So if they cyber attack you, do you get the bomb? There's this question in international law, is question of proportionality. The United States really doesn't buy into that, but international law says it should be proportional. So if they cyber attack you, you can cyber attack back. Attack back.
That's all. That's all.
Well, Barack Obama said the United States reserves the right to use kinetic warfare against a cyber attack. So Obama said, hey, listen, you can attack a cyber, but if we think it rises to a certain level, we'll bomb you. Okay, just let me know.
Yeah.
Right. So he established that as, that's kind of the closest thing to an Obama doctrine. The internet can be considered sovereign territory by any country. Territoriality gives it. Because they can say, it's not sovereign territory. It's the internet. Under international humanitarian law, there should be consideration for preventing attacks against hospitals, humanitarian aid workers, medical personnel, UN officials, and the environment. So they're saying there should be some rules, even in the cyber domain. And that's actually being negotiated right now. We're working on a treaty.
Good.
It's terrible. I think I sent you guys a treaty that's being negotiated. We'll talk a little bit about it, because there's a lot of people who say this is a bad treaty, but we'll make judgments. States have the right to exercise control and impose restrictions on internet service providers and their personnel hosted in their own country, as well as any infrastructure located there as well. So, Meta, right, or any internet service provider. If that service provider is a vector for the bad stuff, for the malware, as a host country, we can say, we're going to shut you down. Right? We can exercise sovereign control over the internet service provider that connects you to the internet. You see this all over the world. I mean, this has become almost a standard pattern. Riots in the country, there's all kinds of problems. The first thing the country do is shut down the internet, because everybody learned from Tahrir Square what happened in Egypt. It's like, oh my gosh, they're organizing. And they're organizing faster than we can shut it down. I mean, so in Egypt, during the Arab Spring, they're texting people, saying, go to this street, and the police would come out, and then they say, no, move over here. So they were being able to move and to protest and operate much faster than the Egyptian police or military could respond. So since that time, one of the first things that happens if there's any civil unrest, you shut down the internet. You prevent the ability of the opposing force to coordinate its activity. And the government takes over. In certain limited cases, states may have the right to exercise extraterritoriality, such as in the case of those entities registered or incorporated in their jurisdiction, but with infrastructure laws. So what am I saying? What did I just say? Extraterritoriality. Does that mean that a state could perhaps block an internet exchange point in another country if that's used for a vector into their country for disinformation or for damaging malware? We do it all the time. It's called defend forward. The United States, like, if you're using that proxy server in Amsterdam to attack us, guess what? We might shut down that server. We'll tell the Dutch first. In fact, if it's a NATO country, we say, hey, will you guys shut down that server?
But it might be too late.
Right?
It might be too late, though.
Well, but I mean, we usually give them the benefit of the doubt. That's kind of an agreement we have in NATO, that we're all going to support each other. And a lot of times when we see that there's some malware through packet sniffers that are moving through this stuff, usually, to be honest with you, they usually tell us first. The Dutch are really, really good. They kind of impress me about how they run their cyber operation. In fact, it was the Dutch who we found out much later were letting us know about 2016 that the Russian St. Petersburg Internet Research Agency was hacking into the internet. And you know how the Dutch knew? They had hacked into the security system and were watching the Russians through their own cameras inside the building. The Dutch were there. And they were saying, oh, well, we're watching these guys. They're hacking your system. First they told the British, and then the British told us. So they're really, really, really good. Individuals using cyberspace and the internet are covered under the jurisdiction of the state where they are physically located. Yeah, right? So you guys using the internet, this is a tricky one. If you attack another country, you're under U.S. jurisdiction. But as you know, the United States sometimes has gone after people in a third country that are hacking into you. Usually we go to the host government and say, excuse me, but we got a problem here. You need to arrest this guy, and then extradite him back to the United States. Usually we have an extradition treaty, and that means that the U.S. Justice Department has to do what's called international judicial assistance. Letters derogatory. I remember I've issued these. I've transmitted it to third countries and say, you got to go get this guy, and here's our documentation that they did something bad in our country. We got this agreement with you. Go arrest them. Now, a lot of times they'll say, okay, we'll go knock on the door. Excuse me, but the Americans are upset at you, and they want us to come get you. But you have a right in our country to go before a judge and say, the Americans are all wet. Now, I didn't do any of that stuff. So then it ends up in an extradition fight in local court. And we have to send over our lawyers and with our evidence to show, no, you really, Rocco really did it. And Rocco got a local order and said, now the Americans are just trying to get me. They don't like me. And these cases sometimes last years in court. Mm-hmm. And sometimes we lose. Sometimes the host government says we're not extraditing.
Yep.
Because you didn't prove to our satisfaction this guy really did something wrong.
It's difficult to prove regardless.
But sometimes they'll say, all we do is present it, and off you go, and the marshals put you in handcuffs. So it just depends on the country you're in.
Yeah.
And what kind of relationship they have in the United States and how much they want to assist or not.
Yeah.
Right? Because, sometimes they're like, yeah, okay, you can have one. I mean, and they don't even put up much of a fight. a lot of times it depends on how much money you got. I hate to say this, but if you can hire some really good lawyers and spread a little.
Yeah.
So my mom would say, you take the cake and you cut lots of slices. You make sure everybody gets a piece of cake, right? You do that, and the country would say, well, U.S., I don't know. It's right to a hearing. It's going to take a while. We have our process.
Not worth it.
But if you're real poor, you're on that plane so fast, they don't even let you get your bag. Okay, go with the marshals. So the Tower Manual on International Law holds the cyber world for Rule 11. Rule 11 states, cyber operation constitutes a use of force when its scale and effect are compatible to non-cyber operations rising to the level of. So what is that saying? What is it saying?
It's saying that if the cyber attack has such a scale of damage that it's causing physical harm to people, then you can react in kind.
Absolutely. And that's where we hang, in the United States, we hang our hat on that. We say, in fact,
Our power grid.
one of the things we look at is, you can damage things physically. Take down a grid, power station. But if you kill somebody in our country, we're coming after you. That's kind of been the U.S. position. We kind of let everybody in. If you attack it. Now, the other side of it, like you were saying, you can have a cyber attack that leads to
Yeah.
a loss of life because it hits critical infrastructure.
Yeah.
Like, take down the grid in the middle of winter, people freeze to death, right? So, I don't know if you guys were all here during the big freeze. I always call it the big freeze. That was an eye-opener, wasn't it? I felt like I went back like 1,000 years to primitive human beings settlement, right? Because I had no gas, no electricity.
Yeah.
I had to break out camping equipment to cook, I had a little cook stove and all that freeze, and I said, never again. So I bought a 20 kilowatt generator that runs my whole house. I said, I am not freezing. But it makes you think about how dependent we are on this critical infrastructure and what the danger would be if there was a massive cyber attack. Because even my 20 kilowatt generator, I have to have natural gas, which means there's got to be infrastructure to push that gas into the system, right? What you got?
But I think, limited it to just, the death of someone. That's kind of saying you're free to do whatever you want, just as long as you don't kill anyone.
Well, the United States
And
is
teaching them
real
wrong,
ambiguity on that, right?
You know what I mean?
Yeah. You're right, though. So the whole whodunit thing, right? So this has been a big debate conceptually. Okay. So, Nathan, you attack your country. You guys are in cahoots, right? All three of you are in cahoots.
No, I'm not.
Russia.
I'm not.
Russia, Iran.
No, Iran. Why you put me with Iran? No. I hate Iran.
Me, little United States. We call the United States. And we're like, wait a minute. So we reach out to UK and maybe France and Germany. We say, NATO, we're buds. We got to attack these guys back. Now you guys got to ask yourself, okay, if we attack them,
I have nukes.
what if they then attack us, right? We got Spain over here. Spain said, we ain't attacking anybody, right? We're busy right now. We got this other thing we're dealing with. We're dealing with Catalonia, right? And so we're not attacking anybody. Germany says, well, we got this election going on. And things are kind of buggy over here. The UK said, yes, we'll stand with the United States no matter what, right?
Oh
So
my
it's like,
goodness.
hey, you're putting a big old target on your back.
Yeah, we're coming for you, man.
We're coming for you. So this idea about, what is that? Because you guys, you sneaky guys, you're not attacking us directly. You're bouncing all your malware off of proxy servers in places like Sao Paulo, Brazil, right? In Lisbon, Portugal, in Mexico, or the Dominican. I mean, you guys are You're attacking from different vectors. So I gotta figure this attribution. Because under international law, for me to retaliate, I gotta make sure it really was you guys. And you say, it wasn't us.
Prove it.
Yeah, prove it.
You can't. So it's over
Well,
with.
we kinda can.
No, you can't.
Yes, we can.
Eric,
Oh,
Eric,
man, can't.
we're gonna
But
fight
here's the
Eric.
thing- But here's the thing. To be able to say we can prove it, we might betray what we call national technical distance. We might, remember I told you about in World War II after the Enigma code was broken, the British found out the Germans were gonna bomb the city of Coventry. And asked Churchill, and Churchill said, we can't tell them.
Can't do it.
Because if we evacuate the city and tell them, they'll know we've broken the trade. And for the long-term interest of winning the war, those people in Coventry, you know, we will salute them for their service, but they're dying for a greater cause. We can't. So a lot of times the United States, in these instances, let me tell you, we not only know it was a country, if you read the Mueller report, read the Mueller report. In the Mueller report, not only do they say, you know, Russia was doing, we give the name of the Russians who were hacking. We put down when they were hacking, when they were in what building, at what time of day, what servers they accessed outside of Russia.
But that was one.
Then we put them, we do
There's
this all
millions
the time.
more, Eric.
We say where they work, what time they go to work and all that stuff.
It's
So
one report, Eric.
but it takes a lot to do that, and then as soon as we let the other side know we have information at that level, they immediately start patching systems, they start
Yeah.
changing their procedures.
It's true.
We don't want them to do that. So a lot of times we gotta let it go. Again, it goes back to, can we recover from the damage and didn't kill a lot of folks? And, you know, is it worth letting them know? Sometimes it isn't. So then we have ours. Oh yes, stuxnet. I think I told you that story and told this family, this couple. So nah, they're not gonna bomb. Israel's not gonna. They're gonna do something.
Mm-hmm.
This was a year before it happened, because it was a logical thing, right? So, kind of interesting about stuxnet. I think, and you guys can argue with me.
I will.
I know you will. I think that stuxnet was the digital equivalent of the atomic bomb. In other words, the United States had this capability. We used it. Everybody figured out we use it. Now everybody has the capability, or they want it. So we sort of started, we opened that Pandora's box. Right? It was like,
Yeah.
so what we got out of it, was it really worth it? I'm not so sure. I mean, you know, okay, so we
Well-
slowed down the
You're right.
Iranian nuclear program,
Yeah.
probably put it back a couple of years. Right? And some people would say that stuxnet brought it to the bargaining table. Remember they negotiated a deal called JPOA, Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. Don't you love that? Joint
Mhm.
Comprehensive Plan of Action. The Iranians said, okay, we'll cut a deal with you.
There you go.
Right?
That was like they're only gonna enrich to a certain extent.
Yeah. Right. They can have nuclear energy. Nuclear energy is not against international law. They even agreed to active monitoring of nuclear facilities by the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA. They said, no, your inspectors can come in. They can hang out at our reactors. They can watch. We could cameras up. They agreed to all of that. Right? And the United States, Britain, France, Germany, Russia, China, and the UN all agreed, all signed. Can you imagine getting the United States, Russia, China, France, Germany, all to agree? We all agreed. Signed the papers.
Okay.
Who wanted to scuttle the deal?
Who won what?
Who wanted to scuttle the deal? Or who did not like the deal?
My gut says France.
No. France was totally on board. France was going to try to sell them some uranium, but I'm just kidding. You know, that's how the French are, right? Oh, you want to buy some of this? You got this reactor, you know. They were trying to make deals, and they really were.
China?
They have such good-
No, China was
Or,
on board. China was on board because they were gonna build them a reactor.
Russia then?
No, Russia was on board. Russia was gonna sell them some uranium. Everybody's gonna make money off this thing.
You see the UK?
Maybe
No,
US?
the only one who
US?
was against it, no, Netanyahu.
Why?
Why? Of course, why?
Oh.
Right?
It's obvious.
Oh,
Netanyahu
yeah.
was against it. So Netanyahu convinced a new incoming American president to scuttle the deal, Donald Trump.
What?
So once the deal was scuttled, the other country tried to say, no, Iran, please, keep going. But the U.S. then imposed sanctions. And the Iranians said, wait a minute, the only reason we were going to agree to this is because we wanted to be brought into the world economy. We got a bad economy. I got all these people who need jobs. You were going to lift the sanctions. You're going to build the light water reactors. The Chinese were going to come in. You were going to let our products be on the international market so that the economy gets better. Now you got all these sanctions under, the U.S. says, we're backing out of agreement. Not only do we back out of agreement, we impose what they call secondary sanctions. So if a European company wanted to do business with Iran, we would sanction the European company. Even though we weren't going to be involved, so Iran's economy grows down to a halt. So they started enriching past the level that they were supposed to, right, under the agreement, because they say the agreement doesn't work anymore. Now, they still had an agreement with the IAEA, International Atomic Energy Agency, about monitoring and all that. And Ayatollah Khamenei said, we're not going to make a bomb. He even went so far as to issue a fatwa. You know what a fatwa is? It's an Islamic ruling. And in his fatwa, he said, nuclear weapons are against Islam.
Iran said that?
Yeah. Khamenei said this.
What?
Now, nuclear weapons. Here's what some U.S. analysts said, but possession of uranium that is weapons grade is different from a assembled weapon. So the thinking is that the Iranians are going to continue to enrich to get enough uranium that's weapons grade that they could build a bomb in the event
Something
that
happened.
there was a threat. And you know who the threat is?
America.
No.
Who?
Israel.
Israel, okay.
Israel, right? Because who has the bomb? Israel. Israel has a bomb, although no one ever says anything, right? They have the bomb, but they don't want anybody else in the neighborhood to have a bomb, which is understandable, right? It's a tough neighborhood. I wouldn't want anybody else in that neighborhood to have the bomb either. You know who I think is going to be the first country in the neighborhood to get the bomb?
Saudi Arabia.
Absolutely. It's going to be the Saudis before it's the Iranians. Right? In fact, some people say that Saudis have an agreement with Pakistan because the Saudi Arabia paid for some of Pakistan's bomb development. So the thinking is that they could sort of rent a bomb because, well, we kind of paid for part of the development, so when we need one, we're just going to rent it. You bring it over, right? Now we got a bomb. And they've got all kinds of like American planes that can carry bombs. But they don't have one yet. They don't really need one right now. So they throw a lot of money around. They can buy off anybody, so they're okay. So here we have a situation where we had to try. We did this to try to prevent them from building a nuclear weapon. So is that jus in bello, right? Proportionality, right?
Yes.
Discrimination, combatant. Avoid causing suffering. No non-combatants were damaged. Nobody died.
Yeah.
We just blew up a bunch of centrifuges. And they spun apart and wrecked out but it didn't hurt anybody.
Yeah.
And it didn't kill anybody. We just delayed their capacity to build a nuclear bomb, which brought them to, I would say, if you disagree, brought them to the bargaining table. And that's when they say, okay, these guys are pretty slick.
Yeah, let's stop.
We don't want to mess with these guys. Let's see if we can cut a deal.
Yeah.
So that to me is deterrence.
Yes, I agree. One time I agree.
What's deterrence? You agree?
Yes,
Oh my
I agree.
goodness. Okay, I'm gonna mark this down.
I have to mark it down,
Mark
Eric.
it down, right? And I think also there was a lot of good diplomacy in this. Like the United States brought all these people in, leadership, Russia to China, Britain, France, Germany, EU, everybody, we all agreed.
Yeah.
Yes, this is a great, and not only did they say this was a good deal, but they're saying this is a blueprint for future deals. So when other countries are trying to build nuclear weapons, say, hey,
Yeah.
we've got this as an example of what of a deal we can work out.
Huh.
There's some economic development goes in there, blah, 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 right? So this was actually, I think, what they were trying to achieve is that this is a new way we can achieve our ends through diplomacy.
Without
Because
war,
I'm
yeah.
going to tell you, there were a lot of people saying the United States or Israel is going to launch an airstrike. They're gonna take out, because Israel did that with Iraq. Iraq had a research reactor, and they were developing weapons-grade uranium, and the Israelis went and blew it up. They did that with Syria too. You know that? So the Syrians were developing a reactor to make weapons-grade material, and the Israelis blew it up. Airstrikes in both cases, but it was very compartmentalized. It was one place. Iran, learning from that, they scattered all of their nuclear facilities all over the country. So it would take an air campaign. It wouldn't just be a single airstrike, right? So now we're thinking about what goes on in the future, where we have, right? So cyberspace is now a domain of conflict. Not only for surveillance, but also malware injection. The interesting thing with stuxnet, it wasn't done through cyberspace. Apparently, the story is that there was an Iranian scientist attending a conference in Geneva, and they got a hold of his laptop. They put the malware in the laptop. So when he went back to Iran and plugged it into the network where the nuclear facility was, the malware infected the entire network. And I don't know, I think you guys, I don't know if I have it in your studio, but there's a TED Talk by German scientists about how stuxnet works. It's absolutely great. And when I watched it, I got a little pride swelled up in me. Wow, we got some really clever people. This was actually kind of cool how they did this and how it was able to evade detection.
Yeah. And they
in fact,
were so close to going without no one knowing anything.
And well, we can talk about a couple
No,
of reasons
why
it
they,
didn't happen.
I know.
There was a certain guy, Netanyahu.
Benjamin, I know.
Right.
He's the leader over
there. Yeah, this is international law recognizes 5 bases from which a state may extend its jurisdiction and wherever exerts its power: territorial, personal, protect the people. You got to protect the people. Passive personality is kind of an interesting concept. Talks about what the country, each country has a certain national character. If you watch the Olympics, boy, it was French, wasn't it? The French were showing out. They were showing how French they can be. But and so there's this concept in international law that each country is allowed to have a national character. If any of you ever been to Mexico City or been to Mexico, right? You're in Mexico.
Yeah.
When you're in Mexico City, right? There's something about the character of the country. that pervades everything there and their history. They have huge murals everywhere. They're very proud of their history. It's on display everywhere we go. So this is a natural Mexican character. And the last time I was in Mexico City, they had guys dressed up as Aztec warriors with the headdress and all the stuff. And I don't know what they were doing, but they were dressed up
Voodoo hoodoo.
as Aztec warriors because they were commemorating some Aztec calendar thing. And yeah, okay. But it was kind of neat watching them to do that. So that's part of their history. That and the conquistadors. And then, of course, the big thing they play that's huge, there's actually two things. One, and it's coming up, 16 is coming up, right? 16 is Mexico's independent from Spain. And usually on the 15th, right? The idea is that you have a party and you stay up until midnight because the symbol of the revolution is at midnight. It's the 16th. All the bells chimed in Mexico City. The revolutionaries came out and battle started. So the president of Mexico does what he called the grito. And the grito is on the 16th. Everybody's partying. I've participated in this. You eat, you drink, you dance. It's just great. And then
So you were drunk.
Everybody stops.
So you were drunk, right?
No, I was
you were
not.
drunk.
I
You
did not
participated.
get drunk,
Of course.
Yeah.
Because I don't drink that much. I mean,
Fair enough.
That'd have been a Monday then. He was there on a Monday then.
As a high school and college guy, and I think, okay, I'm done with that. I'm an old guy now.
Come on, Eric.
I can just watch other people go crazy,
No.
right? I just go for the food.
Oh, yeah.
I beeline straight to the food. It's great. So people are dancing, and then everything stops. And no matter where you are, if you're Mexican, no matter where you are in the world, if you can find an embassy or you can find some Mexican restaurant, and they have internet connection and the TV, the president of Mexico gets on television, right? And he reads the proclamation. And that's the good stuff. And then you read, and everything's quiet, and as soon as that's done, fireworks go off and you start partying again.
Wow.
And you don't get out of there until like 3 or 4 in the morning, dagger out, you know.
Yeah, you know what it's like.
Yeah. If you haven't done it, you gotta do it at least once in your life. It's one of those things you gotta do at least once, right? So, yeah.
Eric.
So you gotta hook up, don't you? You gotta hook up for this.
Here in Houston for that?
You can go to, well, sometimes the consulate general of Mexico, they have a big party. They'll put tents up, there's food out. But a lot of times you can find that also with different Mexican restaurants do it. Like Machado, they're going to do something like this. So you can go there, party down, right? They're going to have great food, tequila, all different kinds of
my God.
shots get going. I should not be talking to
Oh
you.
my goodness, Eric.
This is not good.
It's not good, Eric.
But it's a cultural
The
exchange.
passive personality, though.
Right.
It really
So
is.
anyway, yeah. We'll pretend we didn't say anything. And then of course we got this guy, right? So you can listen to his thing.
Yeah.
We'll talk a little bit about it, the Declaration of Independence of the Internet. He was a Grateful Dead guy, right? He was a lyricist, but he is a dead guy now. He's no longer among the living. But he made this interesting proclamation in 1996. He read it again, I think in 2008. I think he read it on some podcast. But you can go look at the YouTube video. I'd like you guys to look at it and we can talk about it. What does this mean? What kind of governance is he suggesting? There was all this euphoria early on with the internet. I mean, it was almost like a euphoria now about AI and AI is going to do all this great stuff, solve all our problems. And I keep thinking, we're still humans, right? We're still kind of, I don't want to be, how should I say, too critical, but we're extremely flawed creatures. And we can make a mess out of anything. No matter how good it is, we can make a mess out of it. So, but it's choice, right? It doesn't have to be bad. Because I use the internet for a lot of great stuff. I was just, earlier this morning, I wanted to listen to Ode to Joy from Beethoven's Mason, right? So I found a flash mob that was in Nuremberg, where all these people, kids, and all, they were, you know, there's people walking through the square with their little kids and you see these people with instruments walking in, right? So it starts off with this little girl and she's playing the recorder. She does, and there's a guy there with a bass. So the two of them are playing. While they started, people come in with violins, violas, and cellos, and they come in with oboes and bassoons, and before you know it, there's an orchestra. And then when they get to the choral interlude, a lot of the people who are in the crowd are actually part of the chorus, and they're singing Ode to Joy in German, right? And so I was able to experience that through the internet. I didn't have to be in Nuremberg. I didn't have to be there, right? I can experience that. So there's a lot of great things with the internet. It's not just for, you know, trolling and crazy stuff, right? Do you have your...
So he suggests like radical lack of governance, right?
Absolutely. He's just saying, this is like a pure space, and we don't want government intruding on this space. We should have unlimited free speech. So he talks about that. And so I'd like us to talk about that. You know, what is that actually, what is he driving at? Is there something that we can learn from this? How far have we strayed from that idea? Right? Because right now, you know, we're having this thing with deep fakes.
Yeah.
And AI,
Mm-hmm.
and some of the tech companies, I love this, and you know, I can get trouble for this.
No, you won't.
Now, you guys will keep my secret, right?
Mm-hmm.
I sometimes bristle at people like Elon Musk. He says he's this free speech absolutist unless you criticize him.
Of course.
Then he kicks you off his platform.
Of
It's
course.
Worse than that, actually.
Yeah. Okay, yeah.
Okay, so if you look at government requests of takedowns on Twitter, the amount that have been accepted has actually doubled since Elon Musk has got in. So
Yeah.
government, like for example, Turkey, there was protests and the president was like, "Yo, please take it down." Like they're organizing on Twitter, and he said, "Okay, we're sure." That's not free. Like it's the opposite.
Right.
The requests have remained the same, and the acceptance of requests has increased. It's like
And it depends on who's doing the requesting.
right,
Right.
100%.
Because in Brazil, he's been kicked out of Brazil. And part of it was that the Brazilian court said that there was hate speech and there were, well, not the hate speech, that it was being abused. And so the courts looked at it and said, we want content moderation. You know, like back when there was Twitter, before it became X, they had an entire unit for content moderation.
Wow.
Well, he's gotten rid of all of them. So it's very arbitrary. What Elon wants, yes, no. Like, so my wife asked me, what was this whole thing about the white dudes for Kamala? Have you heard about that? White dudes for Kamala was on X and Musk kicked them off. And she said, well, what was all that? And I said, okay. So, do you all remember a movie called The Great Lebowski? Oh, please. You guys never saw The Great Lebowski?
What is that?
Watch The Great Lebowski. It's a cult favorite movie. It's hilarious. But the central character is Jeff Bridges plays throughout the hospital. So the internet service provider still has Section 230 immunity from civil litigation. So this is, before we go, so this is the kind of stuff, this is 2023, So what, 59.2% said they find information on the internet. Staying in touch with family and friends, 54.8%. Keeping up to date with news, they probably have to be one, right? Watching TV shows, movies, streaming, all that, another half. Researching how to do things, that's, right? I mean, that fixed all kinds of stuff in my house going on the internet. Oh, that's how you fix it? I
Oh
love that
my
stuff.
God.
Finding new ideas or inspiration, 44%, almost 45%. Accessing and listening to music, that's a big one.
Yeah.
A lot of people. Researching products and brands, yeah. Right? And then you go and see which one's better, which one has the best right
Bonds
up.
are taking over that.
Yeah, really, exactly. Education, study related purposes. I'm a little upset at this.
That's
so
really
low.
confusing to
I
me.
mean, come on,
Like,
guys.
only 40% is crazy to me. I mean, our generation has to be like 90%.
I know, really. Hey, wait a minute. I was finding, filling up spare time in general browsing.
Yeah.
It's a lot of.
So I guess none of the hackers actually answered any of that.
No, they didn't.
Yeah,
No, none of
obviously.
the hackers ever.
Yeah, they didn't say anything, yeah.
So anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and let you go. Watching that, John Perry Barlow about the internet, the declaration